Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to Couch Conversations with the Doctors, where health is wealth. What night is it tonight? It is Monday night, and it is time for Couch Conversations with the Doctors. As always, we're going to go around our esteemed panel, and we're going to have some great introductions with them, starting with my colleague who leaves us to go and have fun in the sun, but I think he's hanging back out here in Chicago, probably until the end of the week when the weather changes. That's Dr. Douglas Graham. Doug?
Oh, thank you, Nikki. Thanksgiving is one of my favorite holidays, so I may be hanging around just a little bit longer. So I want to welcome everybody tonight. I'm a retired physician. I worked in the western suburbs for 30 years and then spent 2 years working with a congressman in Washington, D.C. It was an amazing experience. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with my colleagues, and we're going to try and answer your questions as best we can tonight.
Awesome, and thank you so very much to the man who is the urologist for the stars, but he hates to have accolades. However, that's our very own Dr. Terry Mason. Dr. Mason, Forks Over Knives.
Yeah, great movie, great movie. Thank you very much, Nikki, for that kind introduction. It's always a pleasure to be on this program with my esteemed colleagues and to share information to our community. Always happy to make sure that we do that. Spend a lot of time in public service, both as Commissioner of the Public Health Department for the city and running a similar office for Cook County, but practicing as a urologist for over 26 years in the city of Chicago before retiring. So I'll say it again in the words of the late, great Marvin Gaye. Let's get it on.
All right. All right. To the man who has the best art, and he is so modest about it, I must say. That's our very own Joe Harrington. Joe?
Thank you, Nikki. Actually, I was introducing myself this morning in my new position. Although I am retired, I'm now also president of Roseland Community Medical District Commission. So I was chairing a meeting this morning, and I was introducing myself. And I have over 50 years of experience in the field of mental health, education, but mostly public health and healthcare. I spent a lot of time working in health care, worked at 3 different hospitals, Mount Sinai, UIC, and Rush, but spent most of my time in public health. I retired in 2017 as the regional health officer for Cook County, was also an administrative law judge. Happy to be here. I'm glad that you and Congressman Davis provide this platform for us. And I learn something every week by listening to my colleagues.
50 years? You're only 47.
Sure.
To the man who says I threaten him. To the man who says I threaten him every Monday, but he's all on time. That's our very Dr. Miller.
Good evening, everybody. I am glad to be on this panel tonight. When I often think about the goodness of God and how well I'm blessed to be able to continue my life journey, I realized that, I was blessed for a reason, and that reason is to return the blessing. And so I'm glad to be here tonight, and hopefully I can return some of the information and skills and things that I've learned to be a blessing to somebody else. So we're glad to be here. We're thankful that you invited us. And as Dr. Mason said, let's get it on.
All right. As you can see, I blinked out. That's this internet again. Oh, my. To the doctor who is 100, better known as Dr. 100, who's always on these community streets making sure that you are healthy, wealthy, and wise. That's our very own Dr. Maya Green. Dr. Green.
Hey, Nikki, I want to thank you and the Congressman for creating this forum so that doctors from the community can connect with the community. And yes, I'm glad to be back in the Chicago streets, ready to dialogue and learn from my colleagues as well as the community. Thank you for having me.
Outstanding. To the Wolfgang Puck of healthcare, who says he's the weight loss guru, that's our very own Dr. Tony Hampton. Dr. Hampton.
Yeah, happy to be back with you guys. It feels like it's been a while, but The holidays and some personal stuff to take care of kept me away for a couple of weeks, but definitely happy to be back. Always thrilled to share my voice, and life's good, guys. Just grateful. I try to wake up every day with a grateful attitude because, so much is happening in the world. And to be honest with you, it's going to continue to be that way as long as I can remember the world was a little chaotic and crazy. So we just have to touch the people around us and near to us and hope that that'll spread. So happy to be here. Thank you for the invite, Nikki and the Congressman.
No worries. Thank you so very much. Well, of course, we have a leader for each conversation on each Monday night. And tonight, Doug, you're on.
Well, thank you, Nikki. I'm really wondering if we have some questions from the audience from previous sessions that we can begin to answer tonight, because I know we've had some very, very busy sessions.
Well, we did have an abundance of COVID questions about the new vaccine. So if you guys want to give a little education about the new vaccine, that would be great. Want to say hey to Sister Bonnie. Bonnie Schmetley is here with us. She says good evening to everyone. And to Regina Tyler. Well, Regina, it is good to see you. Good evening, Regina.
So, Nikki, can you kind of give us a summary of what those questions look like and sound like? Are they questions about how safe it is, how effective it is, why should I get the new vaccine?
And basically, you're asking those questions that were there. When should they get it? Should they get it? Can they take the flu vaccine and the COVID vaccine together? Will they be taking the vaccine for the duration? I know that was one of the questions. I can simply go back and grab them, but you were asking the questions that they were putting out there. Jacqueline Morris says, I'm a first timer here. Well, Jacqueline, welcome. Nellie Purnell is here. She says, good evening to everyone. And Jacqueline is also saying good evening. So yes, some of those questions are.
So I'll start off by answering part of the question is, yes, you can get the flu shot and the new COVID vaccine at the same time. And there's some people who suggest when you do it, you get a boosted effect. Both of them become more effective. It's safe. There are no more side effects getting two at a time. And there are some pharmacists that might even give you an RSV at the same time. But for me, I'm happy to just get two at a time and then come back for the third. And I wonder if some of the other physicians could comment on the other questions.
Well, I could comment by saying that yes, I got them all.
Okay.
RSV, I got the booster for our COVID friends, and I got I actually got the flu shot.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like a pincushion when I left because I felt like I had an onslaught, but it was the right thing to do. I wanted to make sure that I was not just protecting myself, but I was also protecting the people that are near to me that I care a lot about, and that, I would be better prepared not to catch these things to spread them to other people.
So, Doctor, did you have any problem with side effects?
No, just the pain in the arm.
Yeah.
That I got before from the COVID shot. I got the pain in the arm from that. But other than that, no. And I also got the shingles vaccine too. I felt like a little pincushion when I left. I was sitting there. I was sitting with my shirt off in my primary care doctor's office, Dr. David Ansel, and he had put my shirt down. And the next thing I know, it was a tray of things came in, and it was just like pop, 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 pop. And that was it. So I did them all at one time, and everything. I felt fine afterwards, other than the little pain in the arm, and that's it.
Yeah, I had my COVID shot. I'm going to get my flu shot and a pneumonia shot because I'm at risk. The other thing, I just want to pick up on what Dr. Mason said. I don't take the shot just for myself. I take my shots so I don't infect anyone else, particularly when it comes to COVID and influenza. And so the important thing, because a lot of times people are told, well, you want to prevent yourself from getting the flu. And if you get the flu, you can die. But I think it's even more important to know that if you love somebody, you don't want to give them the flu. You don't want to give them the COVID and have some doubt in your mind if they get the COVID and they're over 65 and they don't make it through, you may have or feel some guilt as a result of not having gotten the shot because you could have unintentionally caused someone you love very dearly to die.
I'd like to add.
Connie take? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I think I read a study today that women who were pregnant who got the vaccine had fewer problems carrying a pregnancy and had fewer low birth weight babies than those who did not get vaccinated. So it's not just protecting the older, but you may be protecting your young child at the same time.
Outstanding. Well, Connie Taylor says, good evening to everyone. Sandell Scott says, good evening. And Regina Tyler says, is this the second booster shot? Maya, you're muted. You're talking, but you're muted.
Oh, no, I was just trying to think back which booster shot is it. I believe this is, I don't know. Let me look into that. I believe this is the.
Well, this is the.
Yeah, well, let me try to frame the question, and I don't have the answer, but I don't think we're talking about boosters now, because we're living with COVID. It's no longer a pandemic, but it is endemic, like influenza. And what happens is it morphs. Maya's talked about this before, and she's talked about it very eloquently about how these things are looking for a host. And so we had our opportunity at herd immunity, and we missed it. So we never reached herd immunity. So we now are dealing with like influenza, we're dealing with COVID year to year. And there will be it won't be a booster. There'll be a shot, just like the seasonal flu. There's a shot every year for the seasonal flu. There's going to be shot every year for COVID, because the virus is going to adjust, and it won't be the same virus. Well, it'll be the same virus in a general sense, but it will have learned how to survive. And so we want to be protected about that virus that now knows how to survive moving forward. So that's the important thing. I wouldn't think about boosters. I would think about this. This is something to do every year. When it's time to get the flu shot, it's time to get a COVID shot. It's not a new COVID shot. What it is, it will protect you against the new strains of the virus.
And I just wanted to mention this, which I've observed, is that I'm without anybody recommending that people, protect themselves in terms of masks and stuff. I am seeing more people who are just either in a situation where they have, a virus or some kind of symptoms of that they want to protect other people from, or if they're just protecting themselves. I am seeing more people, especially in situations where they're amongst people that they don't know, that are wearing masks, and I want to commend them for that, because again, if we do things for ourselves, we don't really have to have somebody to mandate that we do them, and I think that's a good thing to see.
And people may notice. My wife's a pharmacist, so you may notice that the drugstores have access to the vaccine faster than your clinic. Yeah. I think that's probably more size related. Like, I'm in one of the top 10 health systems in the country, and yet Walgreens, Target, Walmart, they get it before us because they're even bigger than Advocate Health, right? So if you find yourself favorable to vaccine, we encourage you to be. You'll find that you sometimes need to just go ahead and get it in the retail locations. Pharmacists nowadays are not just filling your prescriptions, they're doing vaccinations. They're also very soon, and may have started already, they're going to be offering birth control pills. So they're actually expanding their repertoire of things that they offer. And I think a lot of people are still not comfortable with vaccines, although they should be. We kind of started our lives with a ton of vaccines, and we may vaccinate ourselves more than some of the other countries, but it has been clear, in my opinion, that vaccines for most of us makes a lot of sense. I feel like they're safe, and like my colleagues, when I give vaccines, I tend to maybe have a sore arm, and that's typically all I have for a day or so, and that's it. Most people that I see get vaccines and they don't get sick. Your immune system is going to clearly need to create an immune response. And once your immune system revs up, just like when you feel a little, some kind of way when you get a cold or something, you may feel some kind of way just for a brief moment because your immune system is building up immunity. But it is clear that if you create that immunity, you're going to probably be in a better position if you ever had to face the actual vaccine itself. And it's good to hear some of that data that was just shared about the pregnancy outcomes. When you're pregnant, you're protecting more than one person, so you want to do whatever you can to protect the baby and the mom. I also like vaccines because it gives us that, expose. If I protect myself and my wife protects herself, then there's this, you heard that term, herd immunity and things like that. But the more of us who are vaccinated, the more likely, most of us probably won't end up with it. So it's just a lot of things to think about. I think the big message for me is to just encourage people to always have a mindset that even if my current belief does not align with what the doctor is saying today, be open, because the experience, I've been practicing for 28 years, and I can tell you the stories, even something as simple as shingles, right? Man, the number of people who have come to me after having not gotten a shingles vaccine and they get a really bad shingles, they always regret it, right? And yes, some people get a shingles vaccine, they get a little bit of a rash, and they're like, man, I was fine until, but the context is how we look at things, right? And in the context of, a few people getting a little bit of a rash, not the serious stuff, just something very minor, versus those people who get that really bad shingles pain, right? I would easily have a few people have a little bit of a rash for a few days to prevent herpetic neuralgia, which is when you get shingles and it's like a nerve disastrous disease that can last for weeks and years for some people. I've seen seniors with this, and sometimes people in their 60s incapacitated, can't work, can't do anything. And so a vaccine is an easy solution. And there's no solution that we offer people that's perfect. There's no medicine without side effects. There's no dietary pattern, that's perfect. There are people who will try diets and they may have issues with their diet. They may have to take supplements or whatever. So just be open to evolving as a human being, and don't get stuck in just because somebody down the street had a negative outcome, that's your story.
Well, I had Moderna arm again when I got the new vaccine. However, I would rather have Moderna arm than to have COVID.
Yeah.
So it's nothing.
And one more thing, Nikki, we have decided as a health system to go with Moderna, not because we didn't like Pfizer. In fact, all my vaccinations up until now have been Pfizer. So the first thing is it's okay to go to the other if you need to, but that's more of a safety issue. In other words, if you have hundreds of, we call them teammates in our system, who are giving vaccines, and the storage and how you make sure the vaccine's okay is different for Pfizer versus Moderna. What you find is that it puts the team at risk because they're trying to figure out, well, how do I store this one versus that one, and that, so most health systems and some pharmacies even have decided to just go with one version, and it didn't have anything to do with what we think is better. It's just, they just made a decision. I think Moderna was chosen by a lot of people because it's the easiest one to deal with. That's really it. I think the outcomes are similar, but it's easier to deal with. So I just wanted to put that out there for people who are nervous about Moderna.
Well, why would they be nervous about Moderna?
Because they got Pfizer. Like if they got Pfizer previously, we like to stay consistent. So people say, well, I want to get what I got last time. I don't want, because, and you could argue that's logical, but when they did the research, they didn't see any negative outcomes of switching.
Okay, well, outstanding, simply outstanding. Well, Regina says thank you for clearing that up for her. So that was great. Should you take a vaccine or any of the vaccines when you are either on dialysis and or in chemotherapy?
Wow. That's an excellent question. And I can tell you that for the cancer doctors and for the rheumatology doctors, we have guidelines for the rheumatologist and the oncologist how to and when to give the vaccines in relationship to the medicine. And I would suspect that that's also true for the people on dialysis. And you probably want to get them after dialysis and not before dialysis, would be my hunch. But I don't know that for a fact. I'd have to hear from a kidney specialist to know what they would recommend.
Yep. What I would say, particularly if you're in dialysis, you have a doctor, and I would talk to the person, the doctor in the dialysis center, because he knows what you're able to do and what you're not able to do. Just taking advice from us is probably helpful, but the best advice, if you are in dialysis, or if you do have a doctor, is to talk to your doctor, because he knows what's best. He or she knows what's best for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you are if you've been diagnosed with cancer, or that usually falls under that section where they say immunocompromised. I know a lot of people a lot of times don't talk about it, but something you would look at not only for COVID, but for a lot of vaccines, they have a vaccine, what we call a vaccine schedule, meaning who's eligible, how often you should get it, and kind of those details. And in those, there's a section that says immunocompromised. If you have experienced cancer or moving through, you would ask your oncologist or your cancer doctor whether or not you fall under those, because some people have moved through cancer and did not fall under the immunocompromised, but a lot of people that have been diagnosed with cancer do. And so immunocompromised usually has a lot to do with your immune system, your body's ability to fight off infection. And it's immunocompromised because they're saying your immune system is compromised on some level, or it's not really functioning to the level that your doctor may want it to. And so if that's you, always look for that little disclaimer. Always look, because usually they'll say, for instance, they'll say, hey, who's eligible for this vaccine? They'll say 65 and older, 60 and older, 18 and over, whatever. And then a lot of times they say, and immunocompromised, meaning if I'm unfortunately 18 or 12 and I'm immunocompromised, and a lot of times I would be eligible for vaccines that are listed as 60 or other ages. So I said all of that to say, that was a lot, but I said all of that to say, if you move through cancer or experienced it in your life, check with your cancer doctor, also known as an oncologist, and see if you fall under that. That way, when whatever vaccine, because it not only applies to COVID, it applies to all vaccines. Whatever vaccine comes out, you know, you got to read, what do they say? Read the red tape or read the fine print, you know, when it comes out. That's it.
And I'll add that if you have a chronic medical condition and you are concerned, let me reframe that. If I have a chronic medical condition, I by definition will struggle with any infection because my body is dealing with this chronic medical condition. Let's just say uncontrolled diabetes, for example. And we know end-stage renal disease is the number one cause is diabetes. So let's just use that as an example. So if I'm in that bucket, then when you think about the people who have struggled to recover from COVID in the hospital, it's that type of patient, right? So logic would then say, okay, if I'm in a high-risk category, then the probability that I would benefit more from a vaccine is higher than a person who doesn't have those chronic medical conditions. So the way I would approach it if I'm that person is, okay, sounds like vaccines are probably more important for me than my peers who don't have these conditions I'm dealing with. Therefore, my question to my doc is, Doc, I really want to get vaccinated so I'm safe. Is there any additional steps I need to consider because I'm on dialysis in terms of timing, as was suggested by Dr. Graham, or in terms of should I get it at all? For example, there may be some live vaccines that are not a good idea versus ones that are inactivated. And most of the vaccines we give nowadays are probably inactivated. Should I, are there cancer protocols that require me to do it at a certain time? Maybe your immune system, maybe you're being treated for chemo or radiation, and your immune system is not at a point where you can even create an immune response. So I think there are some logistical issues. I will say out loud, outside of cancer, we've not had a lot of stops. Like we have things in our system that says, don't do this, don't do that. And dialysis has never been one of those things they said, okay, you shouldn't do a vaccine because they're on dialysis. Now we've had that conversation around cancer, and it's basically based on their treatment. And we need to make sure it aligns with the oncologist's recommendation. So I think there's always exceptions, but for the most part, a person who's getting dialysis is probably a super high risk person who should be vaccinated, but you always consult the specialist that you're seeing just to make sure. And the team that's caring for you will have protocols in place to assist you, but it's probably going to be encouraged instead of discouraged.
Dr. Hampton, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add to what Dr. Hampton was saying. And that is, everybody wants to, the goal of the medical professionals that are involved in doing this is always to do the thing that's best for you and what's safe for you. Yeah. And many times before you even see or know the vaccine is there, we've already had a lot of briefings about it. We've had experience from other countries where they may have used it. And we've looked at all of those things to try and determine what we should be concerned about in the population that we have to deal with. And we've got people, our population is very mixed up in terms of the way we eat, the other medications we're taking, the things we drink, and things that even affect the treatments for the diseases that the people are at dialysis centers for or for other things for. So it's not just, we just need to make certain that we keep our bodies otherwise as healthy as possible and keep as many toxins away as possible, other than when we have to take medications for chemotherapy for cancers and things of that nature. But I think that we always want to try and make certain that we've done the best we can do to provide the most immunity that our bodies can, and that these things that we're taking, these vaccines and what have you, and these medications, by and in and of themselves won't work if we don't give them a healthy host to work with. So let's make sure that we do our job and one of the other things that I wanted to add before we go, and that is the importance of sleep. We don't get enough sleep, and we need to really make certain that we get the proper amount of sleep, because being sleep deprived also affects your immune system. So you want to make certain that you get the adequate amount of sleep and for the kind of work and the kinds of things that you're doing, so that your body is not already at a state of being compromised just because you haven't rested.
Yeah, I want to pick up on what Dr. Mason said and just add some things, because what we're talking about is preventing something from happening as simple as terms. I mean, you get the flu shot to prevent getting the flu, at least lessen the likelihood that you get the flu. You get the COVID vaccine, at least to lessen the likelihood that you'll get COVID. And so there are a lot of things that we can do to prevent disease. And Dr. Mason is talking about that. And probably the best example is they talk about in public health and probably in healthcare, modifiable risk factors. The things that increase the likelihood that you may get a disease. The non-modifiable ones are easy. Their age, you can't change your age. As you get older, there's certain things that you might become more susceptible to. When you're first born, you don't have a fully fully developed immune system. So that's why you have to protect the young children, particularly infants, from diseases. So age is one factor. Another factor they talk about is sex or gender. But what we're really talking about, you're either born double X or XY. So that's the bottom line. I mean, you might want to change it, but you're either double X or XY. That's the chromosomes that you're born with. You can't change those because you're born with those. Um, so those are two of the major modifiable risk factors, along with what they call race. But race is actually more a proxy for other things. It's not really, for me, race doesn't really determine anything. But race has historically in this country determined the conditions under which you live, which have a bigger effect on your health than some of the other things that we're talking about. The conditions which you live actually drive your access to healthy food, employment, good education, shelter, have a good house to live in, or decent housing. Things of those nature really impact your health. But if we talk about things that you can prevent, then there's steps you can take to prevent those things from happening. And I know what Dr. Mason and Dr. Tony are really big on is how you can eat certain foods to reduce your risk of getting a disease. Because all of the major chronic conditions are diet related. There are two things that really drive a lot of the major conditions. One is diet and lack of physical activities, what you eat and how much you move. So if you're not eating well or eating the right things, you may want to take a step back and think about how you can maybe modify your diet. I'm not saying all of a sudden, I'm not telling you which diet, maybe modify your diet. And the other thing, if you're not moving, because I know a lot of people, and actually I was with a friend of mine today, I gather with a group of friends of mine that are my age and some older, but some of them don't move anymore. They sit in front of a television all day long, and they wonder why they feel so stiff and they can't move around. You need to move.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. It's almost funny that we don't understand that if we don't move, that we're not going to be healthy. And I know it becomes normal when you have a culture where I leave my home and I walk literally down 4 steps, 5 steps, and into my car, which was preheated for me. And if I'm lucky, I have a garage that didn't have snow covering it. And then I get to my clinic, and I'm a medical director, so I park right in the front of the building. And I walk a couple of steps to get into the building. And that's the world we live in. And we have this modern world we live in, and it's unlike those people in the blue zones that we always talk about. And they don't have the luxury of the heated car and all of this other stuff we do. And they walk, and they move as they describe it naturally. And so we need to start thinking about how can we move naturally? How can we exist without having so many luxuries that we are literally abusing those luxuries and realizing that they're causing harm? I think the first part is to recognize that we need to do it, right? And then once we recognize we need to create movement in our environment, then we think of creative ways to do it, rather where you park your car, or when I walk into that clinic, maybe I'll just take the stairs. Maybe I'll take a walk during my lunch break and things like that. So I just think that in order to be healthy, um, there's little things you can do. And again, it's not about what's if you pick the right diet, you're good to go. No, that's not the answer. That is helpful, particularly if you're not eating healthy. But when I spend time, like before I got on this call, my oldest son is applying for a job as a graduate of grad school. So me spending time with him, talking about what he's found, what his search has led to, spending some time with my wife, those types of things where you put your family first, that's part of being healthy, right? Um, don't always have to text them. You can actually have a conversation with them right in front of them. And then you have to think about, who's my social network? Who do I connect with? Part of what we do as a team here is we have this social connection. Prior to joining this team, many of the people in front of me, I did not know. Probably the only person I had some knowledge of was Dr. Mason. Everybody else was new to me. So I have this new family. And that social connection is important because we're like-minded in many ways, and we're out here trying to help people heal. So, and just having a sense of purpose. So if you start moving the needle on those little things, those are going to probably move the needle more than, finding the perfect diet or the perfect way to exercise. We just ask you to move. We didn't say go join the gym. We didn't say, do high intensity interval training. We're saying, when was the last time you took a walk? And maybe you can take a walk with somebody you care about and hold their hand. Or if you're not romantically connected, just ask a neighbor, hey, I'm taking a walk. Would you like to come with me? Just start doing stuff like that. Oh, I'm not safe in my neighborhood, doc. Okay, let's get in the car and we'll go somewhere that's safer. But we can't think of the barriers. We have to think of, how do we overcome the barriers? And if we think that way, you'll be the number of patients that I have that literally, if I say exercise, they look like deers in the headlight. We have to change that. And we have to make it simple, actionable, and maybe even something we enjoy doing. And if we can do that, I think we'll be closer to the health we're seeking.
Well, one of the other things I think we have to also take into consideration is that we have to be responsible for taking care of ourselves. Mm-hmm. And that responsibility start with all those things that has been mentioned here, what we put in our body, as well as what we do not put in our body that may be harmful. And whether or not, that's, when you get up in the morning, if you feel kind of stiff, it makes you not want to do that. But the reason is that you have been inactive all night. And so your body needs some activity. So start moving, as has been mentioned. And again, yes, part of your responsibility is to make certain that you see physicians and that you can get an evaluation and they can tell you and give you advice on how you manage the problem that you have, but also that ultimate responsibility to make certain that those things that you need to do, that you're doing them. Regardless of what advice you get, you're the only one that's going to be with you 24/7. Therefore, you're the only one that's going to know what you did do, what you didn't do, and what you and should be the one that definitely know what you ought to be doing, and that you take on that responsibility. And obviously, there are going to be times when maybe your schedule might not allow you to do things every day, but make certain that that what you don't get done today, that tomorrow you do it, and maybe you do it a little bit extra onto it.
I would add to that the first thing you got to do is you got to love yourself. You got to love yourself, because you got to be clear to yourself that you're worth saving. Mm-hmm. You need to be clear to yourself that you're worth taking care of. You have to be clear to yourself, not for any other reason, but other than that you feel that way about you. No matter how anybody else feels about you, you must feel good about yourself first. And if you don't feel good about yourself, that's going to lead to a lot of problems that we could probably spend another show talking about. But the one thing I always say is that the first thing you got to do if you want to change, you got to want to. That's that word, WANT. You got to want to. You will do nothing that you don't want to do. It just won't happen. So what I would say to what to what you've heard already from my colleagues is that you're the most important asset you have. Not your car, not your house, not your clothes, not your children, not any. You are the most important asset that you have. You are the thing that's necessary to enjoy all those things and help bring your children and what have you along. And the first exercise we learn is how to crawl. Mm-hmm. The second exercise, because we had to crawl first, because we had to get those muscles ready, when we were able to hold on to something, stand up, and start walking. And I think Dr. Tony's already said, I love walking. I mean, I absolutely love walking. And I like it, and I do it a lot. And I'll be walking I'll probably do my short walk tomorrow, which is 7 miles. And so but that's what I do. I didn't start out that way. And the other thing is start small. Don't go out and think you're going to change your whole physique in one workout. That is not going to happen. So start small, but be consistent. And you know what? Let me tell you something about an excuse. If you look for one, you'll find it. So you got to want to do this. This ain't about nobody but you. And whatever you do or don't do, you can't blame nobody else for it, because if you don't do it, the question you got to ask yourself is, why didn't I do it? And we always got something coming up. Lord knows everybody on this panel, and I'm sure their children and their wives and their husbands always got something. So you got to see that you are worth saving and improving yourself. It's nobody else's responsibility to do that but yours. And if you don't take that responsibility to do it, you can't blame anybody else but you.
Amen to that. And also you have to begin to look at, what is it that I want for me? You know what I'm saying is that if we fail to plan, then we're going to fail to succeed as well. And if I'm planning, if I'm planning for whatever aspect of my life, whether it be how healthy I be when I get older, or if it's planned for how I'm going to succeed in my career, you got to plan it and you got to work the plan. And that is how success occurs. You're not going to always be 100% successful at everything, but plan it and work that plan. Then you got a better chance of succeeding with whatever it is that your desires and whatever your plans are. But if you just let things just happen as they happen without any planning, without any working to make things go in a way that you desire, then you know, that's, I mean, I guess they say that you're depending on luck, and luck can be bad as well as good. So be careful with that luck thing.
Well, we can ask Rep. Miller to come up to the rostrum and begin to pass the collection. No, Reverend Miller, I'm serious, and I'm grateful that we're having this conversation, because as physicians, we're notoriously bad at a lot of this stuff ourselves. I gained most of my weight when I was in training. I was eating the worst I ate when I was doing this stuff. So
we weren't sleeping much either.
I'm sorry?
You probably were not sleeping a whole lot.
Not sleeping much either. No, I couldn't.
So I just want to add to this, and that the nice thing about walking is you can keep it simple. You don't have to go out and get a lot of expensive equipment, a lot of fancy clothes, and you can keep your goals within reason. You don't have to train for a marathon. You're not going to be CrossFit. You don't have to do all those real fancy things. You just got to keep adding a little bit every time you do it. And it turns out that a certain amount of time per day will start putting you on the right part of the curve. You don't have to be an ultra marathoner to get the benefit from it.
Well, I'll add my personal story. One of the things that I decided I would do when I retired, and some people claim they don't think I'm retired because of the number of things that I do, but I am fully retired, is I knew I needed to be more active physically. And so I decided that I would exercise every single day. I would work out every single day. And for the most part, I've been true to that. And partly what I knew going into it is you can make something a habit. Now, we all have bad habits, things that we fall into. But just like we have bad habits, we can have good habits. That you can make a decision to change the way you live, and say that, that I've heard what they were talking about. Well, I'm going to start walking one block every day, just one block every day. Make sure that wherever I go, whatever I do, at least I walk a block. If you do that after a while, and then all of a sudden you stop it, you'll miss it because that becomes part of your routine. You don't feel the same if you don't do it. If you change your diet, even if it's a small change, once you get into it, it becomes a pattern, becomes a way you do things and a way you eat. So I focus on making things habitual because then I don't think about it. I just do them because that's what I do. And I think all of us have the ability to do that. You just need to figure out what it is, carve out some time, and commit to it and do it.
Outstanding. Well, we've been both having some tech difficulties, Dr. Green, but I think we're back now. Marianne Jackson says, good evening. Received my Moderna and shot 1 month. Get my RSV later this week. I've started my mask again. Well, I'm doing my mask too, so you're not alone. Taylor says, can you give more information about booster flu shot for seniors? Does this mean I'm getting a dose of the flu vaccine? And we're going to come to that. We're going to come back and answer that question because Dorothy Murphy says, good evening. And then Nellie Purnell had a good question just as well. She says, what is the difference between edema and shingles? Do they both cause nerve pain? Well, Mimi is here, and Mimi says, good evening to everyone. Chief Val Talley says, race and environment, yes. Good evening, everyone. And he also says, what are your thoughts about micro vegetables? Well, what are micro vegetables? I want somebody to tell me that. And Barbara Ivy said, I took my senior flu vaccine 2 weeks ago. Now my doctor wants me to take the third COVID booster. 2 weeks later, he wants me to get my shingle shot. So I don't know who all wants to attack all of those great things, but Tony, there were additional information additional comments and questions that were shared about some things you were talking about, and we're going to grab that right after we can answer these questions. So
I'll start with like let me just start with the last thing, just so I can kind of, and this idea of the doctor wants her to get multiple vaccines kind of back to back, and we've come to the point where we feel that's safe. So you can definitely get a couple of vaccines at the same times, and really you can get 3. It sounds like overkill, but what we found is that getting people back in to do these things can be a challenge. So once we got to a point where it's safe, we have found that, you know what, it's okay to just give it. And when COVID first came around, we weren't really sure. So we were just being cautious. So that's kind of my 2 cents. And I'm not really living in a very green world anymore. I tend to be more of a meat eater, but in my training with nutrition and functional medicine, we learned a lot about everything. And I know, microgreens are like somewhere between where the plant's sprouting and becoming a green plant. So it's like somewhere in between. So these are like very like early in the development of a plant growing, and some people believe that these things have more nutritional value. They certainly have different flavors and aromas compared to the mature plant. So if a person is in front of me and they're like a plant eater and they're looking for different ways to add those things to their diet, this is just another way to do it. I don't know that it's magical in any way. It's almost like you could be more potent in some ways, because a lot of the things that if you think about the Steve Harveys of the world who are making powders and one powder, Steve Harvey's powder is no better than the next one, right? I mean, I'm just being honest. It's just, but it is an interesting way to get nutrients into your body. I would argue the best way is to eat real food. Now, if you just can't pull that off, then you can go to a powder. But eating real food is what your body is used to and accustomed to. And so if you can sprinkle some microgreens into your routine and that's your thing, I think that's fine. For people who, some people, like, I don't tolerate plants as well as the next guy, so I may not do that. So I just think that's how I look at that. But we're not looking for magical cures. Just eat real whole foods, and you don't have to really get into a ton of supplements and a ton of fancy ways to eat things. And I think like, what's the perfect human diet? I doubt that if you go back, to early times, that they were like that concerned. If it was a microgreen, it would just like, give me some greens. So just don't get caught up in all of this. What's hot, people talk about all these different things that become hot. That's not the answer. The answer is to stop eating garbage, sugar, highly refined foods, seed oils, and things of that nature, and start eating real food. If you do that, you'll save money. I prefer you spend that money on real food, and just get in the habit of doing that, since that's really the key.
Yeah, I want to pick up and just briefly on one thing that Tony said, and that's, he used a term that some people believe that microgreens are better for you, good for you. One of the things that we look at in terms of medicine is the evidence behind the medicine. Does it really work? And that's what was done with COVID. I mean, they wanted to make sure that it worked before, and there was a lot of clinical trials and clinical testing to make sure that it works. And I hear a lot on television, a lot of things that people are talking about for memory that you should take because it'll help your memory. But there's no real clinical evidence that any of this actually works. And belief is a very powerful tool. If you take something and believe it works, there's a chance you'll have a good effect. That's called a placebo effect. Because even in clinical trials, they'll compare a drug with active ingredients to something they call a placebo when inactive ingredients. And one of the interesting things is when they talk to people, because they do these studies they call double blind, where nobody knows, the doctor doesn't know what you're taking. Um, that none of the researchers know what you're taking. You don't even know what you're taking because they want to do a comparison, see if this drug really works and does as it's advertised to work. And one of the things they found out is that when they ask people what the side effects are, because they tell people they have to inform consent, they tell people what the side effects are of the drug. The people that get the placebo experience the same side effects the people that got the drug. So belief is a powerful thing, and if you believe something works, then you may want to try it. But I'm one that goes with the evidence. I want to see the evidence or know that there's some evidence behind this, and there's some sound organizations that say that this works, as opposed to somebody said, well, studies have shown. Those studies may be of only 20 people where it worked and it did. So there's a term, and we've probably used this before, caveat emptor. Let the buyer beware. You are the best person in the world to make those decisions for yourself, but make sure you're making an informed decision and your decision is based upon evidence.
That's right. And then, so quickly, I'll grab the zoster and edema question. Edema is typically looked at as swelling that occurs inside your body's tissue. Usually we call it the meat or the white meat or under the skin. Anytime edema usually comes because there's some kind of irritant or irritant and your body rushes to that area because it wants to send your immune cells and all these fix-it cells and blood cells to do the work to repair that area. So how do you travel? You travel like highways. Highways are actually just a mimic of the body's the body's arteries and veins, right? It goes there and then it tries to fix it or tries to deliver nutrients or things like that. So there's usually edema will be caused by that, or after the body has done the work, everything traveled, and then so it put all the blood there, put all the fluid there, put all the cells to do their business, and then the outflow or the valves of the lymph system to return all that fluid, get that fluid out of there, doesn't work. So it's either a backup or a rush in. That's why edema occurs. Now, zoster can cause swelling because it goes to sleep. So a zoster is a little different. Zoster is basically what we know as a chickenpox virus that went to sleep in your nerves, and then when there's an irritant, stress, anything else, low immune system, your body gets stressed, it'll just travel down this. I can't. My arm isn't because of this background. I can't get my arm in there. It'll travel down the path of that nerve and cause irritation there. Right. Sometimes you see bumps along that path, or if it gets really bad, it's called disseminated zoster. It'll be all over your body, but typically it occurs in the same line that nerve line occurs. If I have it here, it'll occur in the line of the way the nerves, almost like a drawing. If I have it here, and so on, it can be anywhere in your body, right? So because I'm irritated there, the body will rush there and cause occasional swelling, but usually it's a little bump, so usually the only time edema will look like zoster is if the edema is right under the skin, and we call that something Bullae. I think I'm spelling it right. It's called bullae. And sometimes it will look like that, right? So can zoster cause edema? Yes. Is all edema zoster? No. That's it. So they're not typically the same thing. I got a question mark. Oh no, that's the end of another question. I was looking at I was like, oh, all right. That's it.
So Nikki, do we have time for a couple more questions?
Well, you've waited enough time to get an answer to one. Why don't we just go ahead? Go with it, Doug. Real quick.
Well, I have no questions in front of me.
Oh, okay.
I want to comment about tonight, because tonight's really been a can-do night. We've been talking about all the things we can do for ourselves. We can walk more. We can be careful about the food that we eat. And we can get the vaccines more than one at a time. And it's safe for us. So these are many things that we can do to have a better life.
Why don't we go around, because we're at only a minute left, it looks like. So why don't we go around the table while waiting on Nikki to get this done?
So Dr. Mason, do you have something for next week?
Well, next week, anytime. Number one, there are no magic bullets. Okay, there are no magic bullets. And you cannot out-eat a bad eating plan. Okay, can't out-eat a bad diet. I don't care what it is. So just know that, and know that at the end of the day, you've got to do the right thing more than once a week to get any kind of results.
Joseph Harrington.
All right, Joe.
Okay, I'll come off mute. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about what's been happening in the Middle East, and then this morning I heard the news, and I think everybody else did, about Damian Green, the 12-year-old who was killed on Sunday night, and I thought about this over the weekend. So this is my for next week, and it's a quote from Martin Luther King, and I think it's important at this time to actually reflect on something like this. Returning hate for hate only multiplies hate, adding a deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. That's my till next Monday.
Amen. Kevin Harrington.
Amen. Amen. Come back to passing the plate. Dr. Maya Green, until next Monday.
Until next Monday. I know the internet didn't want me to be great today. However, I did catch snippets of what Mr. Harrington was saying, and then as well as what Dr. Mason and Dr. Tony were saying, putting them together. And right now we live in a system where, as other things get worse, we know that Black and brown communities, so the things that Mr. Harrington just mentioned, are, even though it's all the way around, we're always connected as humans. There is going to be some experienced impact. Unfortunately, we're going to feel some of that. And then anytime something happens, we know that Black and brown people usually bear the brunt of it, right? So we did hear that, but here's the hope in that, right? Dr. Mason, Dr. Tony mentioned things we could do. Oh, and Mr. Harrington mentioned things we can do. Keep your body active. There's actually a study that came out that showed an active person with diabetes, high blood pressure, all those things, and who was active, and the person with none of those things who was not active, the active person, regardless of the rest of the chronic conditions, will outlive and be healthier than the person over time than the person that's not moving their body. So move your body, put some energy out, get some good energy, healthy nutrition in. Those are things that you can do to put yourself in, whether it's a pandemic of a virus, or a pandemic of inequity, or a pandemic of unfortunate hate. No matter what it is, those are things you can do to keep your mind, body, and soul ready for whatever happens. Until next Monday.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Tony Hampton, Dr. Hampton.
I'll say my until next Monday by responding to Barbara Ivy's question, which basically state I've watched people lose lots of weight by fasting, water diets, intermittent fasting, and others are supposed to be safe. Is that okay if you want to try it? So the answer is, if I said, is it okay? Of course it's okay, but it's all about the individual. And I do have patients who may be on their diabetes medicines, right? So obviously if they're not eating, they may have to be monitored and advised on how to not take medicines when they're fasting. The same is true of all medicine. So I think if you're not on medicine, it's probably safe. However, one of the things that you're missing when you're fasting are electrolytes. So my recommendation to patients, because when you're fasting, you start to make ketones. And when you make ketones, you're going to start getting rid of electrolytes, salt, potassium, magnesium in particular. So if you're not on medicines and you want to try this, you want to definitely think about your electrolytes and maybe consider an electrolyte with the water you're consuming. I would not recommend anybody do fasting the very first time for like 3 days, right? I think you want to ease into it. Maybe start with intermittent fasting, where you just have a smaller feeding window, and then you can start to move up once you see how your body reacts. Either way, it's good to just make sure you have a conversation with your doc and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Is there anything I should worry about? But for the most part, fasting is something we've been doing for generations. So in fact, I think we eat too much, and we need to start fasting just to allow our body to heal and recover. And I think that's what I would add. Other than that, I enjoyed the conversation, and always take what we share with a grain of salt. In other words, always hear it, add it to your toolkit. But then if you're dealing with chronic medical conditions, always make sure your medical team is aware when you're doing something that's different. So with that, I'll end my comments.
Dr. Miller, you're until next Monday.
My until next Monday is a question, and that question is this: what are you willing to do to make things better? Not things better for you, things better for your family, things better for your community, for your state, for your country, for mankind. Because it starts with you. It starts with you. Are you willing to be kind and loving? Or are you going to just lean on hate? Are you willing to choose to care, or are you going to be non-caring? Are you willing to go that extra mile and put up that extra effort, or are you just going to be satisfied with doing nothing? So the question is, what are you willing to do to make things better? And that's my till next Monday.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I love it. Well, Doug, you gave your until next Monday, right? Because like Maya, the internet didn't want me to be great today. My internet carrier knows who they are and understand that I will be changing. I can't take it anymore. This is it. I will be changing. I'm going to go on a internet search tomorrow because I can't do it. Now, I do have an until next Monday. Here's my until next Monday. When Dr. Tony was talking about, walking, moving, how he parks and those things, I got about 17 messages that talked about how do we do that in the city of Chicago. Well, let me share something with you. There are statistics behind, there's proven data that talks about how positive loitering works. So, as I always hear Dr. Terry Mason says, there is no Calvary coming. You are the Calvary. So I'm saying that to say, get a group of friends together. Take your block back. This is what I need you to do. I need you to start doing some positive loitering. Get out and go walking, the group of you, your neighbors. Everybody get together and do it. You're doing two things now. Not only are you moving your body and you're becoming healthy, you're making a healthier community just as well. So if you are less stressed by knowing that you can go in your house and sleep, that's better for you, physically healthy just as well. So let's do that. And that's my until next Monday. Or do like I do. When you go to Wally World, Walmart that is, park in the back, walk to the door. You can do it. Thank you guys. See you next Monday. Have a great one.